It's my podcast.
Hey, everybody. It's Wesley Podcast Launch Week. So,
Yay.
Yeah, long time coming, a couple years, So, I thought we'd get together, chat about it. This has just been such a fun journey. So maybe we just for fun, we rewind a little. So, Brian, how'd this guy happen? Where'd he come from besides your odd mind?
Well, he came out of, after a couple of rounds of development, I landed on the idea of crafting a little man out of the letters for Healthy West Orange, HWO. I did tons of iterations, just tried to, figure out something fun and playful. Here's a couple sketches. And that's our guy right there. He's got not the farting one, just this guy right there.
Why is there always in your stuff, Brian?
It's just a forward and back POV, that's all.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, so I developed tons and tons of those, and then started messing around with the idea of like how he could play around, what he could be doing, how he could be active. So that's the initial thinking behind the Healthy West Orange little character, and then we embedded him in like an enclosure to give him sort of like
because otherwise he would have just leaped out and run around loose all over town,
floating in space. Yeah.
Shoulder.
So that's kind of how it worked out.
What I remember early on too, because when we work with clients, we try to be very attentive to what they need and what they want, and we do our best job, but we usually provide options. And, we went through some interesting days on the logo itself, Brian.
Oh yeah, for sure.
But what was amazing was nobody ever batted an eye on the character. It's like, we argued a lot about the logo, but universally our clients, their board was like, no, that character, that really works. We really want
that's something. Yeah, for sure.
Which was fun.
You're right. Yeah, we ended up 2-3 rounds in before we landed on him. And once we landed on him, that was definitely not the initial execution, but the idea of it was like everybody was on board for sure. Yeah,
it's pretty cool. So now we got this guy, and we thought he was a guy. I'm not sure he was gendered by then, but
yeah.
So now we have to say, okay, who is he really? I guess Duncan, you were the first person to sort of say, let there be life.
Yeah, we were pretty excited that, they were all excited, I should say. We've got a Snoopy, so not that he has Snoopy's personality, but I always did see Wesley, the character, as like a puppy dog, in that very playful. He's always ready to engage, everybody that, happy to meet new people, and, it's always exciting to meet new people for him. And that he's just very playful and fun. Like Puppy, he makes mistakes, he gets into trouble, but, it's all well-intentioned and everything. But he's somebody that everybody likes to be around or hang around, because he makes people feel good about themselves because he feels good about himself. And so, there's this nice dynamic about him in there. He's, it gives him some leeway to be quirky, to have sort of some odd, senses of humor here and there, or some odd, mental correlations of how he, connects things together. But that's part of this puppy-like whimsy that I see, how we originally developed him, and we were able to later flesh out in terms of what he was going to be doing online and what he ended up doing in the podcast.
And he's curious too. You often said he was very, very curious, which really lends itself to a podcast, because when he asks a question, he's really questioned.
Yeah, he really wants to know.
He wants to know.
Yeah.
Just like a puppy. Yeah. What is that?
I like what Duncan was saying, because, I agree. It's, we see that in the real world all the time, where positivity, people with positive attitudes affect other people, and that positive attitude kind of affects them, and then they in turn kind of pick up that vibe. So I think that's one of my favorite things about him.
I love about Wesley too is he's positive, but he's not fake positive.
No, very genuine.
It's a genuine extension of the brand, Healthy West Orange. Their motivation is his motivation. It comes from the same place.
Exactly.
Carlos, did you just give Wesley a high five in the background?
I did, yeah.
That's
It's
nice.
more like a
Talking
high
too much
five.
stuff about him.
Good on you, Wesley. High five.
Yep.
You know, that's why. By the way,
Twist.
that's you know, you think about how hard it is for because he's on Twitter all the time. Think about how hard that is for him. He doesn't even have fingers. You know, that's
He's doing on Twitter.
that's
Hunt and
A
peck,
horse.
doing this on
Yeah.
on your keyboard is not easy. Well,
He
so then
does
we
voice to text.
then we had to we had to actually bring him to life. So somebody had to figure out what his voice sounded like. So Marianne, I guess you had to harness that one up, right?
Yeah, and I mean, you know, you cast them like, you know, you cast all voiceovers regardless of what they are. You kind of go to the category. So I started, you know, online doing some searching and coming up with a list of some character actors, character voice people, and sent out some auditions. And I got a lot of really great ones back. One guy in particular out of LA, Maxwell Glick, who does some characters. He also does a lot of video blogging and things like that. So he's you know, real comfortable kind of ad-libbing and whatnot, which I thought was a bonus, and he was going to have to do some of this. We had cast him in some Wesley shorts, which were kind of the precursor to this, little 30-second animated shorts, PSA kind of things for online that were real fun, and we really got to animate Wesley a lot and kind of start experimenting with how his voice was going to be. So when the podcast came up, it was perfect time, and I just gave him a call and said, hey, they're talking about wanting to do a podcast. It's going to be, you know, the typicalness of it will be that you'll be in one place and the guest will be in another. A lot of them are done like that. But what's going to be atypical is you're going to be, you know, fairly scripted in an outline. So, but you're going to have to ad lib. And he said, bring it. So he was all on board and just a blast, and got to do, and you know, we got to do all sorts of fun stuff, sing songs and things like that. So he was a real, Wesley's a joy to work with. And he also had that, captured that childlike innocence and enthusiasm that is really a hallmark of the character description.
So the other side of the podcast for me was the backstory was, you know, Wesley is not a sophisticated technology producery guy. So the backstory was he was hanging out at the farmer's market in Winter Garden one weekend, and this young woman, you know, walks up to him and says, hey, you're Wesley. Yeah, no, I've seen you online. You know, you ever think about doing a podcast? And he'd be like, well, I don't know anything about doing a podcast, you know. And she, you know, our girl Luna she's pretty assertive. She said, well, I know a lot about that. You know, let me help you. So that was the idea. So then now we got person number 2 to bring to life. So Olivia, you were the Luna mama. Now, how'd that go?
Yeah. Okay. It was weird for me. I say weird. It was exciting and weird. Surreal because I'm an actor. I'm a writer. And I'm also 23 and inexperienced. So they're like, so you're going to write this character. She's in your age range. So you're going to do it. She's like 21, I think. So yes. And I'm like, yes, I am. And at that time, I was living in Colorado in an apartment with my friends who were also around my age because, you know, we weren't all isolated in our homes and minds yet. And so I got people that I could ask questions. I was like, would you say this person? Would you say this thing? I don't know, because we're all different. And I am a strange person. So sometimes I can't trust all the things I would say.
Oh, not like that happens with any of the rest of us when we write. No.
Right.
We always get it right exactly the first time.
Yeah.
When you say, like, when you ask friends, is that just for, you know, like slang or sayings or like, just a point of view?
That point of view, like, so they would ask me, the podcast had topics, right? So one of them was, I believe, something like things in small steps. So the podcast would have topics and they'd say, run off of this. For Luna has a segment she does. I didn't write the part she had at the beginning. I didn't write her little individual lines. I wrote her monologue, basically.
Okay.
And they would say, go with this. And I would sometimes be like, I would come up with a thing. And I'd say, friend name, would you think about this?
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Or it would be a slang thing, like, because if the client sent something back to me, and I didn't think it worked, I might ask my friends just to make sure I was right.
How would you say this?
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember more than once we got, as you do, we got a little bit of pushback. We'd say, actually, that is what someone that age would say. We know because we went out and talked to a bunch of them, and that's what they say.
Yeah.
I mean, and I think the Luna character to me is, she's really an interesting person. I mean, I see long term her having a whole sort of character life of her own. She's got a backstory going on, and
she's on Twitter now, which is so exciting. When I saw her Twitter, I was like, she's a person. I've never, I've written for the blog. I've written a lot in my life, but never professionally, other than for this blog that we have. I've never written to have somebody embody the person I wrote. So it's wild,
Yeah,
and another person is embodying them, the social media person. It's like, where does reality and fiction, where is the line?
Luna is ever present in my life because I had to download the Bitmoji app and create her on Bitmoji. And so now every time I cycle through my text options, she'll pop up. She's like, surprise, or
it's me.
Some option to, it's weird.
I always
hear Luna speak Spanish too.
I did not write those parts because I obviously don't speak Spanish.
But,
that is not where my expertise lies.
But she is Latina. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Very,
Which
very
is one concern I had, because I don't have the knowledge. So I just had to run with that. And
It sounded so natural though. It was like
She speaks
accent.
Spanish. Yeah, I had when I cast the person, I basically they had to be bilingual. She doesn't speak a tremendous amount of Spanish in the podcast. Occasionally more throws in one-liners and things, and so I would just have her say, and go ahead and then say this back, and say however you would say it in Spanish, or give me a line from your something your grandmother would say to you. So the actress herself had a lot to do with that, a lot of establishing that kind of feel.
Oh, cool.
I keep expecting an email inviting me to her graduation from UCF.
right.
Of course, with this year, maybe not.
Are we doing
A drive-by graduation.
Progress in life? Do they intend to do that?
Well, look, good question. I mean, who knows?
Older?
Who knows what the future's like, right?
I mean, who knows what the future's like?
Well, that's why I
I'm
wrote
gonna
the
have to
scripts
update my
that
Bitmoji.
way. I wrote the scripts that way because I knew there's going to be a bunch of them. So when Marianne and I were coming up with a format, I selfishly wanted to enjoy writing them. So, the client is determining what the overall message or content is that is going to be discussed with the subject matter expert that's on each episode. And, when we got Wesley singing his opening song and his closing song, and those things are fun, but they're kind of in the can. So the big payoff for me was the 5 things we didn't know about you that now we do at the end of each podcast, where Wesley gets to ask the guests these questions. And some of them come off a little bit about the topic, but from Wesley's skewed perspective. And others are ones that I just enjoy, I'm throwing a curveball at the client, favorite vegetable, whatever it might be, because those get boring. So that's when you get into, other things. Are you sock, shoe, or sock, shoe when you put them on, because then that keeps them kind of like, keeps it fresh and energizing. Plus it's an interesting thing. And honestly, those are things that Wesley would want to know. So,
I think Wesley
I'm
would
looking
go
forward to doing
shoe,
more of them
sock,
because
sock.
that means more quiz questions.
Yeah, for him, that's important stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Duncan, I think Wesley would go
intend to
shoe,
do
sock, sock.
That's right.
related
What,
podcast.
Olivia?
I just want to know if they intend to do a COVID-19 related podcast episode.
I don't know. Good question. We should.
Some kind of expert on the topic. I think that'd be interesting.
Yeah, I agree. So speaking of podcasts, I guess, and Cass and Carlos, you guys live in this world, but being a dinosaur myself, I'm just excited and thrilled by the fact that the barrier to getting stories out where people can see them is so low now. I mean, we just don't have to pitch a network executive to see if we get Wesley on the air. So how has that evolved podcast wise? I mean, I'm sure it's harder than I think it is, but is it pretty straightforward these days?
It's actually not that hard. I'll say, and Carlos, feel free to disagree, but I feel like out of everything that we've done, getting this podcast approved through all these different channels like Apple, Google, Spotify was the easiest approval process I've ever experienced. In fact, we gave ourselves 2 weeks to go back and forth with Apple, particularly because they're horrible at picking things apart, which is good and bad. But I tell you, with this, they turned it around in, I think, a matter of days, which we were sitting with, okay, well, then what do we do with all this extra time? Guess I'll go have a coffee or something.
That's not how the App Store approval process goes at all.
So it's very painless. It was actually very painless. I don't know. Carlos, you have anything to add or?
I mean, it was painless, but the effect it had on the website, after hearing the first podcast and then going back to healthywestorange.org, it really looked like this was like Wesley's home. He's giving us news, and it completely converted the website, at least for me.
Yeah.
Well, I got to say, I think in the environment we find ourselves in worldwide at the moment, it's backhanded, but it is a great time to have this kind of storytelling out there. He really has the potential right now, maybe more than ever, to help people get through this a little bit. I to your point about future, I really hope that Wesley gets to interview some folks about, maintaining resilience and mental health and stress reduction.
Yeah.
And, all this, because he's a real guy,
So let's keep in mind that, of the topics they've already covered, many of those are still applicable right now in terms of, healthy eating, in terms of managing stress, in terms of taking on new challenges or new tasks one step at a time, not letting the initial, size of the task be so overwhelming you don't know how to take that first step. Just start taking little steps at it. So I think a lot of it is still very applicable, even more so right now.
Yeah, no doubt. And, I guess maybe to close out, I'm pretty excited that I live in a community that would, as a community, put this much resource, not just Wesley and the podcast, but the entire notion of what Healthy West Orange is. The idea of an aspiration for a community to come together and say, we are going to own the responsibility of becoming the healthiest place in the United States. That's cool. That's sort of, that it's maybe corny, but it's sort of it brings a hometown feeling to me. It's like, hey, I live into somewhere, which is really fun. And boy, kudos to everybody at Healthy West Orange and the district, because, again, this is pretty innovative stuff in that world, right? So, well, look, we'll get together again, hopefully. And I kind of hope Wesley and Luna see this, and maybe they'll send us an email or something. I'd like to hear from them now that they're sort of stars on the internet. Just remember who your friends are.
That's right.
No, she might send you a text later, Bob.
Yeah.
It might look like it's coming from me, but it's...
Don't get creepy, Brian. Don't get creepy.
All right, you guys, go back to work. Thanks.
All right. See ya.
Yep. See ya.
It's time for another West League Podcast online talk show episode thingy, brought to you by the good folks at Healthy West Orange. So here we go. On with the show.